Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Music Tech Help Guy, and welcome to part 13 of my Logic Pro 11 Essentials course. In this video, I'm going to explain and demonstrate how to make audio recordings with a microphone. And I'll also touch on the basics of using take folders to store multiple takes. And we'll also talk about double tracking some instruments like acoustic guitar so you can get a wider stereo image and just a fuller sounding recording overall. So to record in Logic, you're going to need a few things. You're going to need a microphone of some type, and we'll talk about the differences between, the three main types of microphones in just a bit. You'll need an audio interface that has a microphone input. This is typically going to be an XLR input. I'd highly recommend using a pop filter of some kind to prevent plosives while recording, and you'll also want a pair of headphones. I highly recommend using closed back headphones so that you don't get any bleed from the headphones getting into the microphone. You don't want to go about making audio recordings with your studio monitors turned on and not using headphones, because you're going to get a nasty feedback loop between your microphone and the studio monitors, the speakers. So you don't want that. So anytime you're recording audio, you absolutely want to use headphones. In a studio environment, you may have like a separate room, like a tracking booth that you record in. In this video, I'm not going to make that assumption that you have your own tracking booth. I do next door, but I'm actually going to make all of my recordings right here in the control room. So I'll just be connecting my headphones directly to my audio interface for monitoring instead of using some sort of like a fancy monitoring system like you'd see in most pro studios. Next, let's talk about the three main types of microphones. In general, most microphones can be classified as dynamic, condenser, or ribbon mics. And the type of microphone is determined by the transducer in the microphone that converts sound pressure into electrical energy. So with dynamic mics, these are also called moving coil mics. And the way these work is typically with like a plastic diaphragm with a magnet on it and a moving coil in between the diaphragm and the magnet. And the sound pressure energy that's coming into the microphone vibrates that diaphragm. And then that sound pressure energy is converted into a voltage. With dynamic mics, you don't have to have any sort of external power. You don't have to supply any power to the diaphragm. But with the next type, condenser mics, you do. You have to supply what's called phantom power. This will typically be shown as a 48V button or switch on your audio interface. Sometimes you may have to turn this on in the software that goes along with your audio interface as well. And the reason why condenser mics require power is because they use a capacitor-style capsule or diaphragm that essentially is like an electrically charged capsule, and you feed that phantom power, and the sort of fluctuation in voltage because of like the pressure of the capsule as the sound waves hit the capsule, that is converted into electrical energy that can then be fed into your audio interface for converting to digital. So the upside of a condenser mic is that you get more sensitivity, so you can sort of mic at further distances away and still get a decent sound. And you also get a wider frequency range. So you're going to pick up more of the sound content, the sonic content that's there. So like a microphone like this is a Lewitt Ray microphone. This is a standard condenser mic, so it requires phantom power, and I can kind of get a little further from the mic, a little closer to the mic, and I still get a pretty decent pickup. With dynamic mics, you get a much more limited frequency range as well as sensitivity. So typically with dynamic mics like this Shure SM7B, I would have this very close to my voice or whatever instrument I'm recording. And as you pull it away, you're really going to hear a drop in volume. So typically when I'm using dynamic mics, I'll use these on like guitar amps. I can use them for like voiceover work where, I don't have like this wide vocal singing range that I'm working with. The Shure SM58 is probably one of the most famous dynamic mics that's very commonly used
in live sound for vocals and other instruments. Dynamic mics are also great when recording drums, in particular the close mics on the drums for kick, snare, and toms.
Whereas condenser mics can really be used for anything. They're pretty much my go-to for vocals, acoustic guitar, really any acoustic instrument, except for maybe horns and strings. And that's where the next type of microphone comes into play, the ribbon mic. This is a Cascade fathead. And the way ribbon mics work is they have a thin strip of corrugated aluminum that's placed in between two big neodymium magnets. So ribbon mics are really closer to dynamic mics in terms of the way they produce sound. They use the same dynamo effect that dynamic mics use, where instead of a diaphragm and a magnet, it's a thin strip of aluminum foil in between two magnets. And that's what generates the voltage. As you sing or play into a ribbon mic, that ribbon vibrates, and then that energy is converted into a voltage, which then can be fed to your audio interface and converted to digital. Now, ribbon mics, I don't use them a lot for vocals, although historically they have been used quite a bit for vocals in the past. If you're looking for that like vintage vocal sound, these are great for that. I love using ribbon mics on guitar amplifiers, and I love using them on horns and strings. Really any instrument that has really harsh like mids and highs, ribbon mics really excel because they help to tame that harshness. And I also use them, like a pair of them, quite a bit when miking drums. I'll use them as the room mics for a drum kit. Okay, so that's it for microphones. Before I jump into Logic, I need to tell you about the sponsor of today's video, Boombox. Boombox is a fantastic resource for bands, musicians, musical artists, and producers, where you can collaborate with others, promote and share your music. And Boombox even has a set of creative AI tools that you can use to assist you in your music making. You can store your audio files and even full DAW sessions, but unlike other file storage services like Dropbox, you can invite collaborators to your project and they can leave timestamped text or voice feedback on your projects. This is great when you're working with multiple musicians or co-producers and you want all of the feedback to be in one place. You can even create your own inbox to receive files from people who don't have a paid Boombox account. As a promotional tool, you can create your own artist page to share your music with the world, or you can tap into Boombot AI to help you generate MIDI musical ideas, assist with writing lyrics, and there's even a built-in stem splitter and vocal remover. If you want to give Dropbox the boot, head over to boombox.io today and sign up to get 4 GB of free storage. And if you need more than that, you can upgrade to one of their pro or premium plans. Okay, so there are a few things we need to do to get set up and prep for recording. The first thing I'm going to do is create a few audio tracks. So I'm going to choose audio, mic, or line. And then for the number of tracks, I'm going to type in 3 because I want 1 vocal track and then 2 acoustic guitar tracks. We're going to double up the acoustic guitar for a thicker, wider sound. So I'll just click create, and there are my 3 audio tracks. The top one, I'll go ahead and just name this vocal, and the bottom 2, I'll name acoustic guitar 1 and acoustic guitar 2. And if you want to, you can create icons for these just by right-clicking or control-clicking. So I could choose like a singer with a microphone here, and for guitar, I could choose a couple of acoustic guitar icons. That's really more just for organization, not for anything else. Next, I'm going to go up to Logic Pro Settings Audio, and we want to make sure that the audio interface that we're using is selected as both the input and output device. And for recording, remember you want to use a lower buffer size. I'm going to go ahead and use 64, and that's going to give us a really, really low latency, 4.1 milliseconds of round trip latency. Make sure that your recording delay is set to 0. It should be by default. And then one other thing I'm going to check are my recording settings. And right here under overlapping track recordings audio, you want both cycle off and cycle on to be set to create take folder. What this will do is it'll create a take folder where we can store multiple recordings. And this is a really helpful way to record in Logic. Let me show you how this works, just the basics. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my count in, although you can leave this on if you want a 4-beat count in before you start recording. I'm also going to turn off my metronome for now.
And just as a test recording on this vocal track, I'm going to mute it because I'm not using headphones right now. And I want to make sure that this track is set to the input where I have my microphone plugged into. So right now I have my microphone plugged into input 1. And if you're using just one microphone to record, you're making a mono recording. Even if your project is in stereo, single mic recordings are mono, so they only use one channel. So make sure that next to the input you see a single circle. If you see a double circle, this means that the track is in stereo, 2 channels. So you can click on this to switch it to mono. The only reason you would use a stereo audio track to record is if you're recording with 2 microphones in a stereo array. Next, let's make a quick test recording. If you're using a condenser microphone, remember to turn on phantom power. If you're using a tube condenser like I'm going to be doing, they don't require phantom power because they have their own power supply. And you also want to turn up the microphone gain on your audio interface so that you're getting a healthy signal level. Each instrument or voice is different, so you'll need to check your levels for each new recording you make. I typically shoot for peak levels to be around -12 dBFS on the level meter, although many studio engineers will use -16 or even -18 dBFS to leave extra headroom in the recordings. With more percussive instruments and drums, it's not uncommon for me to have peaks up around -6. Most of my voiceovers are between like -6 and -9, but in general for studio recordings, I shoot for around -12. It's okay if it's a little higher or a little lower. You just don't want your recordings to clip or peak during recording, and you also don't want a recording level that is so low that you have to pull up the gain a bunch later in post, which also raises the noise floor. Okay, so after your mic is all set up, you can click on the R button on the track you want to record to. This puts the track in record enable mode. You should see some signal coming through on the track, and then you can press R on your keyboard to start recording. Test 1, test 1, test recording 1. Then you press spacebar to stop. Now, the great thing about take folders is this allows you to just record right on top of a previous recording. So you can do this multiple times over and over again. And then later on in the next video, we'll go through and we'll comp all of these takes together as a composite take. Take 2, test recording 2. And what you'll see is we have a take folder here. You can double click to collapse the take folder, double click to open it up. Here's take 1 and here's take 2. And every take you do will just be stacked up inside of this folder. So that's how we're going to record both the vocals and the acoustic guitar for this project. So with my metronome on, my count in turned on, and I've also adjusted the tempo of my project to 76 BPM, I can just press R to make my first recording and do my best to stay in time with the metronome. All right, with my first take done, I can go back to the beginning and then record a second take right on top of the first take, and Logic will pack these into a take folder. I'm only going to do 2 takes for each guitar track, but you can repeat this process as many times as you like until you get a take you're happy with. Then I'll jump down to the second guitar track and double track another take, trying to match the rhythm of what I played in the first take. Keep in mind that you'll hear both parts in your headphones if you record this way, so if having the second part in there is distracting for you, you can mute that track while recording. I made some mistakes in that last take, so I'll do one more take on the second guitar track. And if you see your stereo output clipping while you record, this doesn't necessarily mean that your recording is clipping. Check the channel meter for your recording signal. Here it's because I'm monitoring both guitar tracks plus the metronome. The metronome is what's making the stereo output clip. Okay, so I've got my 2 tracks here, my 2 take folders, each with 2 takes inside. In order to view your takes, you just double click on the take folder and it opens up the take folder. You can select take 1 or take 2 or whatever number of takes you've made. And then you can double click on the take folder to collapse it back down again. You can also select your takes right here. So if I want to switch over to take 1, I can do that and you can see the waveform changes. Although take 2 seemed to be the better take for both of these. Now, one other thing I want to do here is I want to enhance the sound of these guitars a little bit. I'm going to press X to open up the mixer, and I'm going to solo this guitar just for now, and I'm going to double click on the EQ slot right here. And what this will do is it'll add the channel EQ to the audio effects on that track. I'm going to go up here to the presets menu. I'll go down to guitar. Let's choose this one called Acoustic Guitar Bright. So it's a little brighter, but it's really missing the low end. So let's grab this low shelf and let's pull that up a bit. And then what I can do is I can hold Option and drag this plugin over to the second guitar. And now both of those guitars have that effect on it. Now, another thing I like to do when I double track like this is I like to pan one of these over to the left and then the other one over to the right a bit. And this will give us a nice wide stereo effect. Now, anytime I talk about double tracking, someone will ask me, why not just record the guitar once and then duplicate the track and pan left and right? That will give you no stereo effect whatsoever. The only thing that's going to do is maybe make the track a little louder. It's actually the differences in the 2 recordings that make the stereo effect. If you just pan a duplicated track left and right, you will not hear any stereo effect whatsoever. And in preparation for recording vocals, I'll pull down the level of the 2 guitar tracks. Okay, so now I'm ready to track some vocals. For this musical example, the vocals don't come in until bar 6. So a really helpful tool for recording is to set your cycle range around the area that you want to record, and then give it a little bit of extra time at the end and maybe a bar or 2 before you're supposed to come in. And what this will do is when I start the recording will start right here at bar 4, and then I can jump in at bar 6. So I don't have to reset the playhead every single time in order to set my recording range. I can just turn on the cycle range, and when I press record, it'll start recording from that point. Don't worry, don't cry. We've got another day to set things right. Wake up tomorrow and put your best foot forward and give it another try. Another thing that's really cool about using the cycle range to record is you can do loop recording or cycle recording. Essentially, the recording will just jump back to the beginning of the cycle range, and I can pick up at the beginning of the phrase without having to stop and restart every time. We've got another day to set things right. Wake up tomorrow and put your best foot forward and give it another try. Let's try to get a better take on that second half. Don't worry, don't cry. We've got another day to set things right.
Wake up tomorrow and put your best foot forward and give it another try. Yeah, that was a lot better. Let's do one more. I'm going to try to be a little more consistent on the second half. Don't worry, don't cry. We've got another day to set things right. Wake up tomorrow, put your best foot forward and give it another try. Okay, so much for a better take, but I think I've got enough takes to work with here.
Okay, so I've got my 4 vocal takes here. One thing I didn't point out earlier is that the notepad is super helpful for typing in lyrics and notes and things like that. So generally when I'm, writing lyrics for a song, I'll use the notepad for that. For my takes, you can see I've got take 1, 2, 3, and 4. There's also a 5th take up here, and that's just because the loop recording came around one more time, and then I stopped it right here. If you need to get rid of any junk takes or just really bad takes, you can just right-click or control-click on these and select Delete Take, and it'll delete that take. Then I can grab this little guy here and pull it over, and then I can select take 1, 2, 3, or 4. Here I think take 3 was the best take.
Don't worry, don't cry. We've got another day to set things right. Wake up tomorrow and put your best foot forward and give it another try.
Okay, so in the next video, we'll talk about quick swipe comping and creating composite takes, as well as doing some basic editing of our recordings to clean up the front and back end and to cut out any silence between phrases. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel to see more content like this. As always, thank you so much for the support, and thanks for watching.